Okay, I'm just doing this. Okay. So welcome, guys, and thank you so much for making time, for coming through and making time. I really appreciate it. So tonight we are here. We are here tonight, Mr. Bartlett. We are at the behest of the CEO, Mr. Bartlett. So I think the order is basically I will start and sort of do like the initial step at the book, at the review, and then as per tradition, I'll then open it up to the rest of the members to share their views of the book. And then later on, we then rank the book out of 10. And we then motivate why we are rating the rate that you are giving it. So it's pretty straightforward, nothing complicated. There is no right or wrong view. Obviously, we read the same book, but we get different views out of it. So I nominated someone to do this, but anyway, Tom Greer, next time she's also reviewing the next book. So the Diary of a CEO, who has read the book? Malisela, you have read the book. Shama, then
I haven't gone too far with the book, Dr. Roch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have the book. You sort of
yes,
have
I do. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
I think I only read the first 2 pillars, so I only recently started with the third one. Yeah.
Okay. I hope after this you won't give up on it. You'll finish it off. I hope it will be motivation enough to finish it off. So Steven Bartlett, I had a signed copy of the book from the man himself, which I wanted to brag, but I can't seem to find it.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't give it to any of you guys by mistake. So I had a signed copy.
Where is it signed? Maybe I'll look at it.
It's signed.
Yeah, I'm also
somewhere.
checking mine.
Yeah, hey, I hope I didn't give you the signed copy. Anyway, so the guy was in town last December. Steven Bartlett, he was speaking at a conference. We were hosting a conference a day before at their conference. So he came through, and that's how I got to have the signed copy, because a mentor of mine was attending the same conference the following day where he was speaking. And that's how I got to get a signed copy. Is a Botswana-born entrepreneur, left Botswana. He's born to a Nigerian mother and a British father. They met in Botswana and I think relocated when Steven Bartlett was 2 years. I think he's about 33 years. So he's about 33 years or so. He's now based in London. He's sort of like a rising podcaster, so to speak. I know Trainie said she follows the podcast very closely. I follow it, but not as close as Trainie. So he's based in the UK. He's also a dragon, as part of the Dragon's Den. He's invested in some businesses in the UK. So he's done relatively well for himself. His podcast is doing very well. I think I wanted to share with you. Here we go. His podcast is doing very well, and I think Trainee, as a fan, would know this because she follows the podcast very closely. So I'm gonna try and see.
You want the link to the YouTube channel?
Yeah, I think I did have the link.
It's the diary of the CEO.
Yeah, here we go. Got it. So I hope you can see.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Okay. So he's got about, let me minimize this. He's got about 5.6 subscribers, 5.65 million subscribers, 281 videos, and you'll sort of get a sense of why I'm showing you this. And some of the popular, I mean, he has interviewed quite a lot of popular people. So I mean, I know he's interviewed Simon Sinek. We have reviewed his book, Start With Why, Russell Brand, Gary Neville. I think recently he interviewed Black Coffee, I think. Black Coffee was also somewhere in the mix. Apologize. So he has interviewed quite a lot of people. So apparently when he was here, Thierry Henry also, so apparently when he was in the country, he spoke about the fact that he interviews about 2 people a day, right? So he's got quite a lot of Black Coffee, Simon Sinek, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Pastor Rhymes, Yuval Harari was also on this podcast. Oh, and then my favorite, we reviewed Elon Musk in Jan. He also interviewed Walter Isaacson, who wrote Elon Musk's biography, Busta Rhymes. So it's quite a popular podcast, and the book itself is, one can argue, is a summary of the podcast. So he's done very well for himself, and he's basically running the podcast as a full-time show. The book is divided. If you read the book, it's quite thick, right? So quite dense, but it's an easy read. I found it to be an easy read, very easy to read. It's got graphs, it's got quotations, it's got all these illustrations. So I found it to be an easy to read. It's basically divided into 4 parts: the self, the story, the philosophy, and the team working with people. So it's divided into 4 parts. So basically, it's 33 laws of business and life. So I will just go through 1 or 2 laws, and then I'll open it up to get your sense of the book. I think, let me say this later after, but I think the 3 laws that stood out for me as I was reading the book, the first law, I think law number 1 is quite powerful. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order. And he says in there that there's 5 buckets to life and to success, and you want to be filling them up in the right order, right? And then bucket number 1 is what you know, which is the knowledge, your knowledge, the one that you have, what you can do, the skill that you have. And as I was reading this, the first 2 buckets, I just came out of a discussion with a friend of mine from Ghana, and he was discussing the whole notion of PhDs versus technical skills qualification, and he was saying that there seemed to be a high emphasis on PhD, and less emphasis on skills that you need to have, skills meaning the things that you can build, yourself. And as if the two are mutually exclusive. And it was actually debating that actually the two go hand in hand. Any successful economy needs these two skills. You need to have high competent, qualified people, but you also need to have highly skilled people. And he was using the argument that if you look at Germany, for instance, Germany has got a good combination of PhDs and high skilled engineers who can build things. In this case, they've built cars. And he was using China as an example to say China has also managed to do the same. China has built the economy, manufacturing economy on high technical skills, but also they have quite a high research output in terms of PhDs. So what Steven Bartlett is saying is the starting point is, accumulate knowledge, but after accumulating knowledge, that's not enough. Develop a skill, right? So those two are important. And once you have the knowledge, the skill, then build the network. They always say it's not what you know, but it's who you know. So build the network. And then once you've got the knowledge, you've got the skill, you've got the network, then that will give you resources. So resources could be financial resources that you are able to, could be, the things that you are able to accumulate because you've got the knowledge, the skill, and the network, and then you get the resources. And then, of course, comes your reputation, what the world thinks of you. So I found this to be quite interesting, especially the order that he was putting there. Get the knowledge, get the skill, and then build the network, and then that will result in you accumulating resources, and then also ultimately you'll have or should have a good reputation. And he talks about if you were to have a professional earthquake, so in other words, if something wrong was to happen to you and you lose your reputation, you lose your resources, and then you lose your network, at least have the two as a foundation. Have the knowledge and have the skill, because those will never go away. The network can leave you. You can lose all your resources and you can have a bad reputation, but you should not lose the knowledge and the skill. So I found that for me, it was such a huge insight. I've always known you need this knowledge, the skill, yeah, sure. But I think now after reading this, I appreciate the fact that you need to know how to build things, not just intellectualize them, but also know how to do things. And then, of course, network is always a challenge. As an introvert, network it's always a challenge, but, it can be done right. And of course, resources will be the resultant, and then reputation. So I think bucket law number one for me stood out, and I'll do the two laws. And I think I like what he says: those who hoard gold have riches for a moment. Those who hoard knowledge and skills have riches for a lifetime. True prosperity is what you know and what you can do. So I found that to be quite interesting. And then law number two, I loved it. It's also my favorite. To master it, you must create an obligation to teach it. So that, I think, for me, goes without saying, right? As a teacher, right, one of the things that I've appreciated as a teacher ever since we started writing Lora is it's quite, I just came out of a workshop today. I was giving a workshop today. And it's quite interesting how, as you teach, you are also learning yourself. It's as if you are talking to yourself. And it always reminds you of the things that you knew, but you may have forgotten. So, and to be an expert, and I guess that's why before you are a professor, you need to have taught a class for some hours, because as you teach, you also learn yourself. So I found that to master a topic, you also need to teach it, right? And I think it goes to the whole thing that you need to be able to explain it to your grandmother. If she can understand it, it means you can understand it very well yourself. And then the last law, before I open it, you must never disagree. So I found this to be quite interesting. So we teach this in the leadership course that we offer, that there's a way to disagree without sounding like you're disagreeing, right? Which is, I hear you, but there's another school of thought which says, right? So you're not saying I disagree with you, you're crazy. You're saying, yeah, sure, that's one school of thought. There's another school of thought which says, I prefer this school of thought. I don't prefer. So you're not saying I disagree with you. You're saying I prefer this other school of thought than yours. But yours stands. Don't keep it. It's okay. But this is what I believe. So I found that to be quite interesting that, healthy conflict strengthens relationships because those involved are working against the problem. Unhealthy conflicts weakens the relationship because those involved are working against each other. So again, you also need to be, and I've seen quite great professors do this, where students, they come with an opposing view and they have a funny way. It's like, okay, that's interesting. I've read about that, but I've also read about this other, and they bring other options to the table as well. So I found that to be quite, and I love the fact that he's saying that, your words that you use, small little words that you use, should be used to, our words should be bridges to comprehension, not barriers to connection. So one of the things that we teach is how to have difficult conversations, and I think Shama will remember that, how to have difficult conversations. And in having a difficult conversation, the order of how you have that conversation is very important. You don't start by bashing a person about the things that they don't do right. All right. So you start by saying, I like what you do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are amazing. You're an amazing coworker. I enjoy working with you. You bring a fresh element. You bring a fresh perspective. Right. You just need to work on this one little thing. Right. So you find a way of saying, I don't like what you're doing. You must improve, but you don't say that. You put the good things that they do first, and then you then give them what they need to work on, and that way they'll receive. People love receiving good news or good things about themselves. So when you give them the good things about themselves, they let their guard down, and when their guard is down, you are then able to give them, fruitful feedback that they need to do. So I find this there's 3 laws. I mean, there's so many other laws that I've gone through, but I think the ones that I could relate to are those 3 laws. What I struggled with the book at the beginning, oh my word, I really struggled at the beginning. It was, it's if he's boasting. It was a bit of a, okay, what's happening here? It came out as the boasting, I'm this, I'm not this, I don't like this. So it's like, okay, let's get on to the meat. But I think what I've learned is I've learned to ignore things that I don't agree with in the book, and I plow through to what I agree with in the book. It's not easy. It's very difficult. So I would be reading something, I'm like, no, I don't agree with this. This, I don't agree with it, right? But I don't put the book down. I continue reading, because there might be other things that I agree with. Unless if the whole book I just don't agree with it, then it's just, why do you put yourself in such a situation, right?
No,
So there are certain things. Sorry?
I'll close and move on.
Yeah. No. I'm able to differentiate. Like, I appreciate that people have different perspectives to my perspective, and that's okay, right? And I'm able to, it's like a thick skin. I'm able to develop a thick skin and just ignore or move on to other things. And that's what I was saying to Madi, because when Madi said read the book, he was like, yo, what did Dr. Roche put me through here? And then I said, no, just continue reading. And then you'll get to the part that the meat.
I think Dr. Roche's camera Oh, his internet is.
About the book,
Hey,
but I'll
Doc,
take
are
at
you
the end.
back?
No, not controversial about the
Okay.
book, but I'll share those at the end. Rating it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Can
you
you guys
now.
hear me? Okay, awesome. So Mali, since you are on the platform, don't leave the platform. You just come back. You're on the platform.
The way I wanted someone else to go, yo, Doc. So, let me go.
Yeah.
I read this book, as you know, Doc, as you said. At first, I was like, yo, I can't do this. This guy's too much. And you're like, no, continue. I think it was the first two chapters, and I was still like, this guy, yo, he's draining me. But then the more I got into it, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And it blew my mind. Like the book itself actually blew my mind because he goes into things that you don't realize that marketers and psychology has a big effect in your life, and you don't even realize it. So for me, there was one chapter that for instance that I about self. I think the what I think, yeah, in the first pillar it's the law of self, right? And I just want to check quickly. Yeah, so so when he talks about self-awareness, know what you know, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, your emotional triggers, to navigate challenging effects. I think that was one of the first one that I really stood out for me as you were saying, as I was saying. And all because a lot of the time we go through the motions of what's my weakness is my weakness, it's fine, let me just, and you almost don't want to focus on your weakness, and you sometimes become very naive at what you know, and what you don't know, you think you know. And that for me was quite interesting because really people are their worst enemies. And he goes into depth with that, where I think I had to, in fact, yesterday I was actually talking to someone, and we were me and this guy were talking around just something that he knows he's not good at, but he he didn't realize that the very thing that he's not to say he's not good at, but he struggles with, the very thing that he struggles with is actually the very thing that's gonna keep him down in a way. And he didn't really realize that actually what's going to happen, because the more I asked him, in fact, it actually talks to one of the other laws around asking questions that I also really liked. Instead of I think it was the same law, Doc, that you spoke about, but instead of actually how you influence people is they must get their own revelation, And funny thing is, I started doing that with him yesterday. And I just started asking him questions and questions and questions. And eventually he came to a place, he was like, Ish, actually, yeah, nah, I think what you're asking me is really tough, because I can see how this is actually going to be my downfall. And for me, it was like a light switch to say, hey, actually, that's actually very important, that a lot of the time we shouldn't actually come there trying to convince someone, but asking people obvious questions that they eventually get to their own revelations about, And yeah, I think out of the pillar of self, that was probably the two, or the one, and the other one I think is in the other growth, I think. But what I actually want to talk to was when he was talking about the law of clarity. So communicating with impact, right? And for me, that was also another law that it really stood out. So he says, avoid wallpaper at all costs. I think that's the one. Wait. I think that's the one. But in any case, it says the law of clarity emphasizes the importance of clear, concise, and impactful communication. And then why clarity matters. In today's information overload, people have limited attention span. If your message is confusing and convoluted, it will always get lost in the noise. And I think that's true. A friend of mine and I were speaking once, like a year back, around how it actually is hard to pay attention these days with everything happening around, with the amount of information, in fact, one of the things that today I was actually listening to another podcast by I think it was by Craig Gushel, and he talks about the noise and how we should navigate the noise, right? And coming back to this, the book itself, he talks about how you must understand what you're trying to communicate. Almost go to first principles. If I would put it in Elon Musk's book, go to the first principle around what you're actually trying to communicate. Let that a base, know about the base, know what the whole essence of your of the idea you're trying to communicate is, and then move on from there. Because what then will happen is it'll be a bit more simpler for a person to actually catch on, instead of you telling them that every single part of the picture, and the person is left confused to say, kind of what were you even talking about? You know, and that for me is what really stood out. It's one of the main things that, in fact, in my own business, I thought to myself after that, I was like, okay, let me actually go sit down and look at if I'm clearly communicating what I actually want to communicate, instead of just saying, hey, look at my business, there's this feature, there's that feature, it will help you with that, and that, and you end up confusing everyone. So clarity for me is one thing that really got me it really got me thinking a lot. And then I just want to read some of the benefits that they talk about, right? So it increases efficiency. So when your message is clear, people understand what you need from them, and the first time around, this saves you time and avoids misunderstanding. And the other one is stronger relationships. It says clear communication fosters trust and builds stronger relationships with your team, with your clients, and with your stakeholders. And then the last one I wanted to mention was motivation and inspiration. A clear vision and mission statement communicates effectively, can motivate and inspire your team to achieve great things. Now, that especially for me, I saw it firsthand. When I first worked for the company I used to work for, they had a whole mission statement, you know, they had the whole everything, and it was clear what we're actually trying to do. And eventually, a corporate bought the company out, and that corporate brought in their own identity, but didn't clearly show what it wasn't clear at what actually are we here to do in this organization, you know, because things started changing, strategies started changing, but there wasn't any clear mission, vision statements. There wasn't any clear what to do, right? And that ultimately, you could see the inefficiencies in the company. You could see the fighting amongst different departments, because people didn't necessarily know what their job was, because now everything was I could be a project manager, and next time I'm installing devices and all of these things. So it became very, very cluttered. And in the clutter, you saw that people weren't motivated at all. There was no unity at all. And I could see it. And as I was reading this, it just reminded me of obviously where I used to work. And then the last law that I want to talk about, and that one blew my mind like a lot, Doc. I forgot which law it was. I won't even lie. I read this book. I think after 2 weeks, I was done with it. And I put it back, I put it away and started reading something else as well. But there was a law where he talks about, and it's all about psychology, right? And how it's gonna frustrate you. I was actually looking for it now, but it's around how you set. He talks about how marketers have been playing mind games with us for a long time, and he I think it's by Rory, the actual one, I think it was Rory Sutherland.
The thing, you shoot your psychological moonshot first.
Yes, the moonshot. Yes, thanks, Jen. It was Devil. Oh, thanks, Devil. So he talks about the psychological moonshot. For me, that one was like, we've been duped this whole time. So he talks about how one of the psychological moonshots that he got to learning the first time was his barber. So he goes and he cuts this guy comes to his house and he cuts his hair the whole time. And he's always thought to himself, yes, this guy is the best barber. I don't want to go anywhere, just because of one psychological moonshot. So he talks about how And it's funny because now every time I go to the barber, I start thinking, or is this guy gonna touch me again? But in any case, he talks about how the barber will cut his hair and he'll look at it, he'll go wash it if he has to wash it or do whatever, and then he'll put him back in the seat. And then he'll take the clippers again and start acting like he's cutting his hair more. And it looks like he's paying attention. There's detail to what this barber is actually doing. And yet this guy is not even doing anything to him. He's just doing the clippers. It goes, and he's actually not even cutting his hair. But for him, it looks like, oh, wow, this guy actually he pays attention because he goes all the way to washing my hair and then coming back and then trying again to touch-ups and everything. But the touch-ups are actually nothing. It's just a way for you to perceive him as this guy's actually doing a great job, or this guy's actually doing more than what I act. So how you actually discovered how this thing worked is that the one day the barber, this barber V's was in a hurry and he cuts him hair, whatever, and he washes it, and then he says, okay, we're done. He's like, wait, what do you mean we're done? And then he starts asking him these questions. Eventually he realizes, he's like, oh, flip, this guy actually he's been psychological moonshotting me. And I was like, my goodness, these people. So another one for me that really stood out, there's this whole chapter on psychological moonshot for me was the best. And he talks about how airplane, he calls it the rainbow effect. Is it the butterfly effect? He talks about the butterfly effect and how, and the butterfly effect, what happens is marketers or businesses will sandwich what they actually want you to buy with two things that are not as appealing, but they what it is. So he talks about the aeroplane in flights, for instance. You get your economy, and then there's business class, and then there's first class. And he talks about how a flight from London to New York would cost you $800 on economy, and then would cost you $2,000 on business class, and then it'll cost you $8,000 on first class. And you think to yourself, actually $800, just $1,200, and I can get a better seat, and they make it look like it's actually bang for your buck, like it's worth it. $2,000, let me reach for that extra $1,200 and let me get a better seat, And he says in there, he's like, it's actually not the most it's not the best it's not the best ticket if you think of it. The best ticket is that all of you are in economy, whatever you put economy, you get there because all of you are getting at the same time. It's just obviously the level of comfort. But he says they put the first class at $8,000 for you to even think, no, that's crazy, and then the $800 to say, okay, but it's just the $1,200 more. Let me just reach to that. So you end up spending more than you actually wanted to because you thought it's more value for money. So, but what they did is that they shifted your perspective or your perception of how much or what something is worth, and you ended up buying that very thing. And I was like, yeah, nah. And now everywhere I go, I just look out for these psychological moonshots because that's exactly, I needed to hear that, especially going into business and everything. I'm like, yo, these people, it actually, last thing, and then I'll pass it on, Doc. The last thing, it actually reminded me, my sister used to work for a pharmaceutical, and this one day, she's like, she was like, I asked for cough syrup because obviously she used to work for a pharmaceutical. And she's like, okay, now here's the cough syrup. It actually only costs 79 Rand. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm like, okay, but why don't you give me the bottled one? Because she had them there. So give me the bottle. It's like, no, it's exactly the same thing. This one, then that's in a bottle, costs 250 Rand, and the other one costs 79 Rand, but it's exactly the same formula, the exact same thing, except the other one is in a plastic bottle and it's named something else. And the other one is in a glass bottle and it's named something else. And I'm thinking, the quality that they perceive, you perceive quality because of a bottle, a glass bottle. And yet the other one is a plastic, and you don't know better. You don't know better to read the label as well, to say this actually is the exact same thing. But when you want to go there and say, no, I want this quality one because it's in a bottle and the bottle is perceived more expensive and it probably will work better. And I'm like, yo. And he actually explains it with Red Bull as well, how Red Bull makes the taste of Red Bull actually bad so that you can perceive it as, oh, it's good for me, because everything bad, everything that tastes bad actually should be good for you. And I'm just like, yeah, nah, this world is just a lie. But yeah, that's my take on the book. We can't hear you properly, Doc.
I'm saying, sorry. I was saying that I don't drink Red Bull because I can't stand the taste. So I didn't know it was a deliberate thing that they were doing. But yeah, and yeah, it's quite interesting how, as I was reading about clarity, how the more information is out there, the noise levels increase, the more it's difficult to communicate with clarity, right? Whether you're communicating with someone, whether you are giving a lecture, you're preaching, you're presenting something, clarity, it becomes even more difficult because there's too much noise, and the people that you're talking to or the people that you're trying to deliver the message to, they are easily distracted. So it's as if you want to make your message as crystal clear as possible, as emotion inducing as possible, so that people can keep on listening to you and not be distracted. But yeah, thanks for that.
Can I just add to what you're saying now, Doc? He mentions in the book somewhere where he's like, know your audience, because that's the best way to be clear. Because if you're going to get in front of venture capitalists and you want to talk about your features, that's not going to work for them, right? Maybe for sales, the features is going to work. So if you knowing your audience would actually help you better understand what you need to communicate clearly to that audience to actually get the word out clearer and better.
Awesome. Let me communicate my message clear to you, Mali. Thank you so much. Let's get Teboho to come through. Melififi, Shama, get ready. You are next.
I like how Miley said I'll always be the first to pick on. So thank you for love it. So I think I'm a slow reader, and I picked up this book with a bunch of other books, and you know how rare it is for me to actually pick up a real copy and not bootleg. And I think I listen to his podcast a lot, like passively when I walk to work, when I'm showering. Like it's just something that I listen to, because you usually think, oh, it's not going to be deep, or I don't know what's going to happen. But when you get into his podcast, they're actually quite amazing to listen to. It's almost like I listen to some of them over and over and over again. And I was reading this book with an expectation that it's going to be like, oh, the conversation with so-and-so, and this is what this person said, and whatever. But as I was reading it, and I bought it with a bunch of other books. I'm reading Alistair's book, right?
Yes.
And the writing structure and style is the same. Like it's very personal. It feels like you're listening to him talk. You know, it's like, and at some point I could even hear his accent, Botswana, in the book. I'm like, I swear this boy did grow up in Botswana. You know, the way he speaks. You're like, yeah, you grew up in Botswana, you know, and it's amazing, like how when the way somebody will write, even if they had to write their PhD thesis and you listen to them, and if they're a good author, the style doesn't change. They don't try to be more sophisticated in how they write. But I kind of felt like when I was reading it, I was like, I think I've read all the law books and the laws are the same. And it's almost like that these irrefutable laws of life that you simply need to apply, you know? And I remember almost literally 21 years ago, I read the 48 Laws of Power, and I gave it to my boss, who was like a multi-billionaire head, you know? And he read this book, and he comes to me and says, you know, after I read this book, I was very, very scared of you. And I'm thinking, this young person in my office who's read this book, because he didn't want to read it for a long time, because like, I'm a billionaire, I'm a black billionaire in South Africa, I'm okay. No book is going to tell me anything. And he looks at it, he's like, I'm very scared of you because you've read this book, and it worries me that you work for me. And he says, but I realize your weakness is that you don't master any single law in the whole book. Like you've got this 48 laws, you've read them, but you haven't made one single law you haven't mastered it one. Like you don't have any law bending to you. And it got me for years thinking which law in my life, like I took a self-audit and I thought, which laws do I actually apply? Which ones can I master while being true to myself? Because all these things that you get are very exogenous to who you are or how you operate, right? And that's why you'll read something, as you say, Dr. Roach, that will say, that's one school of thought, but I believe in this one. So no matter how many times somebody say, this law works, it might not work because it's not natural for you. And I like that he did that in like the chapter 3. So I've been stuck in like the self, the pillar 1, the self. I've gone through the others and I actually thought, now I'll get to that and apply them. So, and I actually thought it felt like I'm reading a combination of the grit, 48 laws of power, and absolute game.
I noted down as well.
Yeah. And the game. So I was like, but a lot of it is the game. He definitely read the game because he has no game, but it seems like he's actually practiced the laws of the game. And by Neil Strauss, maybe we should actually bring it as a business book more than a dating book. And because it talks about anchoring people, like the psychology of market is that you got to anchor people with things. And some of the examples, like it didn't feel new and fresh. It just felt repackaged. Oh, and also in chapter 1, it also felt like very much like Austin Kleon. I think we've read through, I think I don't know if 3-4 years during COVID, we actually went through Austin Kleon's books about showing your work, right? Because he's a big advocate. He was a big advocate. I mean, wrote 2 books about even step by step of how to actually steal from other people, how to show your work. And that's before even Instagram blew the way it is now. And it's interesting that I disagreed with some of the things that he said, like in the whole teaching thing. And I'm like, I've taught for 5 years, and this year I was like, I hate students. I hate my students equally because they don't want to learn. Like, you just sit there and they're like, people registered for a master's, and in class they're like, oh, it's too much information. Why are you here? So it's almost like there's a new generation of learners that's different. Maybe Dr. Rochelle, like you've got entrepreneurs.
No, you're right. You're right.
Had money to come, but who you're teaching, I think it also helps if your audience is different, right? And they are like this, your philosophy of teaching. Like I like engaging with people and having a conversation. And I was lucky last week I was teaching at Harvard College virtually, and it was nice because like they're hungry for information. And I was like, oh, I wish these were African scholars, because that's what my context and my content is about: Africa, China, to African students. And if they're not there, then you don't know what you're missing, what you're not. So I actually thought I want to quit teaching. I don't think for me it's the best way for me to get better at what I do. But I still believe in showing your work, and I feel like people might think I'm an extrovert, but I'm an introvert at showing my work, and I'm still looking at a way of how do I show my work? Because even showing your process is learning. Because in this book, I kind of felt like it gives you a sense of you got to have this complete package before you show it. So it doesn't encourage showing your process, which can be a weakness, a step-by-step of, like you see, podcast is perfect. It's well thought. Everything, every little thing about it is well thought. So you won't do a podcast until then. And you don't have blurbs, and it's like after like, oh, this is where we got it wrong. It's like he did perfect job. So it gives you a sense. I kind of felt like, this book is for somebody who's well seasoned, super confident. And then it doesn't give you the how to, it doesn't give you examples like do this, but like, oh, here's a step-by-step thing, that's what I enjoyed with Austin Kleon. That's why if you read the game, he also takes you through taking a perfect dog and turning him into like this confident man who can talk to any woman confidently and end up in a good relationship. And even the 48 laws of power, the way that is structured and the layout. And I know this book has like graphs and whatever, but the 48 laws of power, you can just open any page and read like a little tiny thing on the side. This one, you have to like analogical, like step by step and go through the pages. So I didn't enjoy it for that reason. Like I felt like the anecdotes could actually stand out. So you can actually read more on the anecdotes. But generally, the first law just got to me. Like I was like, okay, first law. And I turned into AJ Jacobs. I was like, okay, what do I do? And the first thing says, take care of the foundation. And I actually went and registered at the most expensive gym package at what's it called? The Silo. And I was like, I'm going to work out and I'm going to be like, this is going to be my life. And then I read the Don't Fight the Bad Habits. I'm like, there goes that habit of registering for that And Marcelo, you're right. The marketers will like make you buy something and they calculate it and they basically, even the people at the side are like, no, this membership in 3 years you spend 36,000. If you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna make 100,000 a year from this gym membership. And you're like, okay, and I'm gonna go to the one with the students that are sweaty and nobody like they don't give you a white towel. And after a while, I was like, all I get is a white towel. And that's it at the other one. And I'm paid 10 times more. But luckily somebody took a bet with me that I'm gonna quit in 2 weeks. And that for me, it's like you put a R1 bet, I will win that R1. But if there's no motivation and money and you know, a lot, even just a little to lose, the reputational risk, which I saw it with the box. I was like, there's this thing that you want to work away with face on certain things. Like there's a point that you want to work away with dignity, and that's why you don't quit. You know, and I also think that's a psychological thing. It's a cultural thing. So there were a lot of things that I kind of felt like there's a cultural element to it and the norms that we grew up with that will make some things work and some things won't work. But I love that the whole first bucket thing, because I was like, before I even read any laws, let me get my act together on these 5 buckets, right? And I don't know if any one of you have listened to Naval's podcast, like a 3-hour, the longest podcast ever on how to get rich without getting lucky. And he makes the same point about people coming to you, that be that person, like master your craft so well that if somebody thinks, who do I go to this person for ABC? They come to you, you know, and it's like, what do people think of you that they'll make them come to you? And it's the same, it's an old adage of luck happens when opportunity meets preparedness. And it kind of reminds that these things are not new, that these irrefutable laws, and it reminded me of my old boss saying, just master one, you know, out of all these laws that you're going to learn from this. So it made me feel like the first one was like, get your act together before you even read the rest of the book, and then decide once you're reading the book, which law you want to master on a personal level. Yeah. And the pillar 2 and 3, I sort of like went through it quickly. I like the stuff that he basically lays out. And I also thought I would like to actually master one thing. And Doc, you started with the whole PhD and skill. You know, and I've done both in totally different areas of life, you know. And I'm a beekeeper, and I've actually said I'm not doing very well as a business, but I see it as a hobby that I'm constantly investing in, because it's got this beautiful skill that actually comes with making honey. Well, I don't make honey, the bees do, but people think you make honey. It's a nice feeling when somebody thinks you make honey. But and every time I send somebody a bottle, I put a little gift inside, right? So I feel like, and I imagine somebody opening and getting this bottle of honey that they know it's real, and then looking for what did the put in this time. But I've been doing it not as less costly as it does, and I like what he said, and I thought there's something practical I need to think about. How do I put in a psychological thing, that moonshot? Like, how do I make somebody believe you're getting something either at the bottom of the bottle, effect, or something like just a little touch that says, before you do this, you know, this is what you can do. And one of the things that I actually realized that the reason that I put in little gifts, I realized when I deliver honey with a spoon, a person almost finishes a quarter of a honey immediately when they open it, because the spoon is there and they just keep eating it. And I was sitting with someone who's like, oh my God, I've been missing this. I should always actually package it with a spoon, because the person will finish it quicker and then they reorder quicker. You know? And so it's also psychological things that you never really thought about. And I think, and that also reminded me of the Colgate story, that the reason they widen the toothpaste is that when you squeeze it, a lot of it must come in at once. And you know how your kids will squirt it all over. That initially, Colgate used to be like in that metallic thing, so it was slow to squeeze out. The mouth was actually smaller, and it took you longer to basically finish it. And one guy thought about, you know, an employee thought, no, let's make the mouth wide and the thing softer, so, you know, people use it quickly. So I like the philosophy on business, the third pillar. And the second, I think they work more pragmatically on business. It's easy to adopt one, but the self is harder because you're fighting with yourself, and self-audit is very difficult. But I think it was pragmatic, because I also like the little cups, because you put the little cups there to sort of like visualize and sort of say, where am I on the spectrum? You know, am I on first bucket, second bucket, or do I have all the buckets a little bit in, but I don't have the first one in? So the first thing it did for me was sort of say, go sort yourself out. before you even think of applying all the pillars. But it also said, you've read this law so many times. Why are we all not successful? And I'm sure I probably feel like that for everybody. Like, why are we still reading so many of those rules that sound the same? And what are we doing? So I think, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. When you talk about the psychological moonshot, I just actually got reminded of someone was saying that are we guys aware that the loaf of bread over time has actually been getting smaller and smaller?
Yep.
Right. And the price is going up. But so and they were giving a lot of examples, like a packet of Simba chips, for instance. Has been also getting smaller and smaller. I found that to be quite interesting. So the psychological moonshot is something that we need to be quite aware of. Thanks for that, Tebogo.
I have when you speak of the chips, I've got my niece who's visiting, and I went to buy a packet of chips, and later on she said, "Mommy, there's something wrong with the packet of chips. It was only half inside." And I'm like, "What you gonna do about it? Are you gonna take it back to the shop?" But she noticed like, it's faulty. She thought like the expired, something is wrong. That she knew something is not right anyway. But
it's no longer the same. And just if they're taking one chip at a time, one chip out of the packet, one at a time. So.
One Zimba at a time.
All right, thanks, Tebogo. I'm gonna come back to some of the things you raised because I also share them, but I didn't want to spoil the party early on. People just arrived to the party, Tebogo. Let them still dance. Shama, thanks, Tebogo.
Pleasure.
Well, where do I even start?
This
book was written by our cousin, as Botswana. We have accepted him as the national cousin. So I actually do listen to his podcast as well. And I actually wasn't even aware there was a book out until it was the book for the month. But I discovered him in January when we were doing Elon Musk. And I was looking for interviews with Elon Musk, and then he interviewed Walter Isaacson. So I listened to that interview. It was amazing. And the other interview of his that I really loved was with Dr. Jordan Peterson. So I was like, this guy interviewed Dr. Peterson. I'm definitely reading his book. I want to hear what he has to say if he sat down with Dr. Peterson. And my approach to the book, I was like, 33 laws, I'm sure there's nothing new here, but let me just get into it. And my other approach was, let me find myself in these laws, right? Like, let me find where I'm lacking and all of that. And I'll also pick 3 in the interest of time so that others get a chance as well. The first one that I absolutely loved was law number 7, never compromise your self-story. You know, the one about mental toughness, and even the story that he wrote with the fighter, even when the guy was like, I've decided that I'm going to finish 3 rounds. So I'm going to finish 3 rounds and no man is going to make me quit. And so I was like, wow, what am I saying to myself? What's my self-story? What am I writing with? You know, I just started also doing like a life audit. So it was the one that really now got me like, I am going to read. And then he tricked me with law number 6, ask, don't tell, question, that the behavior and the question and behavior effect one. Will I do ABC? Will I recycle? And I was like, will I sit here for an hour and read? You know, and I remember thinking to myself, yes, I'm going to sit down here for 1 hour and read this book. Because the yes or no, it makes you sort of commit. You can't wiggle your way out of a commitment. If you've said yes, you have to sit down and go through and see through to it. So I was able to actually, I think, read about 25 laws in 2 days, which is very impressive because I also am a very slow reader. So I was like, okay, yes, I'm going to sit down and read. And I kept going and going and going. So I was like, tricky. He got me there. And law number 18 Fight for the first 5 seconds. I absolutely loved that because I think it was Mali who spoke to the fact that we are all distracted. People are on their phones while you're speaking. Everyone is just, so you have to try by all means to get people in the first 5 seconds. And I love the quote, the big quote where he says, attention might just be the most generous gift anyone can give you. So whatever you're going to make sure that you grabs people attention. And I mean, I loved the book. I loved everything about the book. You know me and books that I love. I love the Kaizen concept. I love the research that he did. And he even says that when he interviews a person, they research so much to a point where when that person walks in, they play their favorite song. I'm like, smart, right? Then just the way he conducts his podcasts, it's about the guest. Most of these podcasts is about the owner of the channel, but with him, it's sort of like he takes the back seat and lets the guest have like the spotlight. And yeah, oh, that's a lot. That's like a lot. You know me, Dr. Roche. You don't get what you believe. So
I know this book was hugging you all the time, Shama. I know your kind of books.
I finished this book in 3 days.
Yes,
he's my cousin, so I had to love
because
it.
It was written by your cousin.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it, Shan. I really did it.
Awesome.
Yeah, there was nothing really new, but he went in deeper to show like, these people, like the marketers are playing around with our minds. Yeah. Right. And I like what they all said, like, what law are you going to master? What law am I going to master as Shama personally? So that's it from me for now.
Awesome.
So that others can get a chance.
Thank you so much, Shama. While we are still in Botswana, Angie, can you come and talk about your adopted cousin? Because you also adopted a cousin there. Can you also share your views? And then we'll be followed by, I want to give Trainee a chance, and then Modise, and then Glenn. No, Glenn, and then Modise.
Okay, no, thank you. Yes, with our homie. I actually, I was debating for a bit of time if I was going to buy the book, and Shama and I, we were talking about, and am I buying? And then I decided at the end of the day to buy it, the Audible. And then Shama was like, no, but me, I like the notes. And yeah, I said, no, Shama, I'll listen to it. But now I really regret it because I think I have to buy the book. So I managed to go through it up to halfway through. And most of the lessons that resonated with me are also the ones that you and Maricela have already spoken. But there's another one that, well, first of all, I know I'm very linear. I know I'm very structured. And obviously the book, for the kind of us that we like a structure and linear, it is nothing like that. But nevertheless, it gives you a lot of nuggets of wisdom, and based on psychology and even science. So I really enjoyed it, despite not being very linear. I enjoy the fact that it's very based on scientific proof, and that's something. And in the Audible, actually, sometimes he is read by him. So I actually enjoyed his voice. It's quite calm, the British accent and stuff. So it's quite cool. I like it. And then he also incorporates, when he's talking about anything, he incorporates part of that podcast or the interview, right? So I found it very easy to listen to. And so as an entrepreneur and a marketer, yeah, it kind of blew my mind. And then sometimes as a marketer personally, I have always been debating, is marketing then playing with games with people? Is it ethical? Is it ethical because you feel like you are cheating? Yeah, but those that we were talking about, the moonshots, for example, and the prices, the concepts about giving them something intermediate, the options, and it's true. I mean, we do it as marketers, but coming from the science behind is really, I found it very interesting. And in general, I think it's also, as you were saying from the beginning, it takes a lot of self-awareness. But when he talks about the first pillar, which is the self, it takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of humility when we're talking about the discussions and, you know, how to disagree and stuff. And as you said it, we tend to rule out people or we don't agree with something and totally we rule it out. And I learned it actually when I moved to Botswana through my husband, because if I was going to church, and culturally speaking, churches in America and in Africa, yeah, they're quite different. And I will rule out completely, like, no, I don't like this preacher or this pastor.
Give me an example. Give me an example. What do you mean completely different?
You're not a fire. This in Botswana, they are hot, fire, or very loud.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I was coming from a Methodist church.
So you guys are prim and proper and orderly.
Yes. And so a lot of the things didn't sit well with me at the beginning. And my husband would say, push through that or don't see that, because sometimes you see pastors that maybe they brag about themselves, like you are saying in the book, right? Bragging. Push through that, see through that, and see what the meat, what in this case God was speaking to you or ministering. So it's the same in this book that we were saying, that what he's teaching me, or what can I take from this, right? So it's a lot of self-awareness, the adaptability as well to new concepts. For example, the law 5, where it says that you need to lean into bizarre behavior, you know, and then that you need to piss people off, like things that are out of your mindset. You need to go away from that. So for me, those are the kind of things that resonated with this book with me. And I'm definitely going to have to buy it, because I'm going to have to be taking notes and underlining and stuff, because I think it's very, very meaty. There's a lot of concepts here. Yeah. That's for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Angie. Just push through the fire, by force. Just push through. From Gaborone all the way to Limpopo. Trini, where's Trini? Trini vanished. Oh, here she is. Trini, come through. I know you like the guy. You are also a subscriber to his podcast. Come through. Unmute yourself.
I've unmuted, Mas. Can you please pause?
Okay, got it.
Hey, Ceci, please pause.
Okay. Who's next? Glenn and then Mudise next.
Oh, Dr. Roch, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah. You are next.
Okay. All right, please.
You can hear me.
Sorry, Doc, were you referencing me or did I hear?
No.
Things?
You are coming later, sir. You are coming later.
Okay.
All right. Trini, go.
Hey, yeah. I love the book, right? And I'll tell you why. I love the book and it's an easy read for me. It's because I've been struggling in reading this. 48 Laws of Power. So they are they're quite similar. So I've had this book for quite some time. It's been recommended, but I couldn't flow with it because there's far too much for me. I think I think you want to be genuine, and it goes against your religion maybe, or my beliefs, my faith. But I saw that it was easier for me to read this one than 48 Laws of Power because it seems to be a little bit manipulative. So power play and use scarcity, you know, after I think somehow as I was reading this, it led me to go into stoicism philosophy.
Yes.
And then that was much easier because it's all more about self-mastery and such. So I loved how the book started. And though you have said earlier that you don't like you don't like the way it started because it seems like he was just puffing himself up. He was speaking a lot about, yes, boasting. But so it shows for me, I empathized with his story because it showed the work, the self-mastery he had to go through. And it showed the resilience he had to go through, even at primary level, with his parents, with his earlier girlfriends, with his business, rejection in business, early business, and being a marketer and having businesses just completely dismiss you in the middle of a pitch, you know? So I understood the part because he showed us the journey of him mastering the self. That part was very important. And then, so that is a fundamental law, and which is something that we are forever working on as individuals. You're forever learning something new. You're forever having to face yourself. If you really don't want distractions and you want to grow, you are forced to sit down and take a collection, do an audit, self-audit, right? So I definitely love law 1. It's important to master self. Then I also loved the idea of learning with the goal of being able to teach that subject. So it resonates a lot with me because when I struggled with university, especially with sociology, because it was like a whole new thing to me. And this is what I did. I would take pieces of paper like from my exam pad, and then I would reenact or try and teach as if I'm teaching, to a point sometimes when a lecture room was open, I would actually be teaching to a non-existent audience. So mastering that format. So I love that. So I didn't spend a lot of time on that one because I'm like, yeah, this is actually how I do things. I speak to myself. I have a live audience wherever I go if I need to practice on a certain element, or to actually see that indeed I do understand the subject, but I always have the privilege of my sister. I can use my sister and like, hey, you're gonna listen to me for an hour or so. Then I love law 5, leaning in behavior. Personal development is very tough, to be honest, especially if you're gonna be leading in business. And this is one of the things that I've noted, saying that lean in behavior. I don't like the bizarre part because I don't like bizarre issues. Like, I just want to know what's going on, you know. But leaning in behavior, and this is what we teach in entrepreneurship. This is what we foster with the conversations we have, the type of workshops we have, is that there should be innovative thinking. And this comes with even the concept of design thinking. There is no way that you would remain relevant. You would adapt to, you'd remain relevant and also be commercially viable if you are not innovative in the way you think and the way you do things, and you adapt to changes outside of you. So the leaning in behavior, the leaning in as well, just shows that if you do not lean in, that means you are like whatever they call them. That's also very, but you are just focused, one-dimensional, and you are not open to see other people's perspectives, even though it fundamentally disagrees with the beliefs that you've held, or even your faith. You know, then you wouldn't be able to exist in one room and do business with persons who are of a different race, who are of a different belief, persons who practice or believe in sexual fluidity, for instance. So these are the people that get left behind. So then for me, it's more about challenging the self. 20, what are you not doing? In which areas have you closed your mind without, principles don't necessarily have to change, but for me, I've seen that it's a challenge. It's a statement of challenging challenging me as an individual, especially working in the ecosystem that I'm in, because you meet a lot of different people. So I would love to get to a point where I never have to lean out of opportunities, lean out of experiencing new things just because I'm suffering from cognitive dissonance, you know. Then there's law number 3, never disagree. What do you mean, never disagree? So like, when I saw the heading, I'm like, hey, whoa. But I understand what he's talking about, you know, challenge people. And I have, it's also, it challenges me as well individually as a person in developing, because then what this means is that you could know so much about how the process works, and yet you have this newbie who's like, hey, it's like not, I would assume only 2000 around, but then Haley 2000 is coming with some attitude and they know it all. And I have seen the process, I know what it's like, and I know how this will end up. And then having the insight and having the insight to actually step back and listen and let this person, or whatever process they believe in, play out without interrupting, is a way of also not disagreeing with everything that every person believes and says. So it's a statement of challenge as well, that law. Then I loved law Kaizen. I live by Kaizen. Continuous self-improvement, and it ties in with the book that we read last, Atomic Habits. So it's I mean, we think that we can't say, for instance, financial discipline. It's difficult to be financially disciplined, and we think, oh, by the time I save this much, it means I need to have so much money. But you don't need a lot of money to start saving, or you don't need to be a millionaire to be charitable, you know? So continuous self-improvement for me is quite important in business, reading, sitting back and also reflecting. Then I wouldn't do away with law number 19 at all. And if it means that I have to reread it again, and I'll do just that. This is a reminder for me. I know where I lack, but I'm continuously improving. That's I love that law for me, especially because he touched on the Kaizen principle, and he gave examples that did a lot of research about Toyota and how they worked, how they applied this principle. I mean, you can see it with a lot of Japanese companies. It's their culture. You love working with them, though they might drive you crazy, but you love working them because they believe in this continuous self-improvement. So love that.
Okay.
I got faith, sorry, I want to
no, last one. For the sake of time, last one.
Yeah, just okay. Law 24. Pressure is privilege. Wait a minute. No. Can I get the ostrich effect, right? So if you say the last one, I'll go with law 23. Read this, right? If you want long-term success in business, relationships, and life, you have to get better at accepting uncomfortable truths as fast as possible. And when you refuse to accept uncomfortable truth, you're choosing to accept an uncomfortable future. So it somehow relates to law number 5 about leaning into bizarre behavior, because then you're starting to think, oh my God, this goes against what I believe in. Then you start experiencing some cognitive dissonance there. But what I like about this is that I even teach it to my daughter, for instance. If she's struggling with something, she can't get a golf shirt over her head, and she's screaming. And when I go to the room and look at her, I'm like, I start from scratch and find out where you went wrong, right? So it looks very simple. And it looks like, oh my God, I'm getting this. I'm very tough. No. life is tough already. So you need resilience. You need to self-reflect. What steps did I take, right, to lead me where I am, to give me the results that I have currently? And if I want different results, how could I make a difference? So with the ostrich effect is that it has taught me then to not think that things are going to solve themselves. It doesn't work that way. Life is not that simple. So it means you need to go and challenge yourself. And some of these things means having those candid conversations, radical candor, for instance. It's very difficult to give feedback, especially when someone is just doing rubbish. Sorry, guys, the word. There were worse words than that one. But if someone is doing that, so like I completely enjoyed the book. It is definitely a must keep, and I'm afraid of this one. I don't know about you, Tebogo, but 48 Laws of Power, I'm still struggling. But you know,
I think I've
it's highly manipulative.
Here's my piece of advice to deal with the 48 Laws of Power. It's not, there's some good laws to practice, but what it does, it helps you recognize when those are applied on you.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's like the game. It's a men's book, but as a woman, you can actually see when a guy is actually using the script. So you use it to sort of recognize the power games and that's why I hadn't mastered it. You observe, and then you basically know how to counter when somebody's being evil or malicious, applying any of the laws. So he wasn't encouraging you. He was actually saying, these are people in powerful roles. These are the strategies, you know. And I mean, if you look at that book, the first rule that I always, for me, respected 48 Laws of Power, is the first one. Don't outshine the master. And you see people
that one works.
Yes, it worked.
It was my project. I look good. You know, I got to present it to a CEO. No, it's your boss's job. That's what it. And don't try to outshine them unless you are ready to cut off his head. So people that don't observe it, they get fired. So it's not
simple
to do. It's learned to see the world.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna have patience on that. So, but yeah.
Okay.
This book for me, I will always advise everyone who's in business or trying to be a leader somehow. It's about leadership of self first before anything else. Effective leadership. You must show resilience before you can go and lead others. And stoicism philosophy, the fact that it's in the mix, I love that integration. It's a soft touch. It's an easy read. I liked it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Glenn, Mr. Mudise, and then anyone else who I can't see on the video because they are ghosting us. Glenn, go for it.
All right, I'll try to be as brief as possible. I think the first thing or my highlights about the book is how you actually, especially in the first pillar, how you interchange between two heads. I mean, at one moment you are the listener, and in another moment you are the person speaking. You know, it also follows through in the next pillar where you are the marketer yourself, and on the other hand, you have to interchange between you being the customer in it. So I find it quite interesting how he juggles between those two heads. I'll just talk about the top three that stood out for me. And the first one will come, that's Law 11, avoid wallpaper at all costs. So I found that quite interesting. Because he talks about repetition as well. He uses something that boomed as well in book titles, like using the F word, you know, to catch us there on the shelves to quickly buy. And, you know, how that quickly also we got familiar with it. I mean, he uses multiple examples like cats recognizing the sound, and the first time it's up, it's awake, and as time gradually goes, I mean, the cat just still falls asleep while loud music is playing. So there he talks about basically what stood out for me is, you know, trying to avoid using the wallpaper effect. And he also explained how he implemented it on his YouTube channel. And I mean, if we now check the number of subscribers, you can see it actually worked. Instead of saying, click the like button, use something different, and people are able to, they hear something different, so people can actually connect to what you're saying.
Awesome.
So that's number one. Number two is it's a bit ironic because it's almost at the end of pillar one, but it says never fight a bad habit. And when you read the first 7 laws, actually, it's like when I went through the first 7 laws, it was like me picking up a lot of bad habits that I do, and only then he's telling me how to never fight it and maybe ways to handle it. I think he was making reference to The Power of Habit. I read the book probably about 9 years ago now, but I mean, just him bringing it in this context, I realized how I actually forgot some of the stuff that was on there. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But I mean, from a habit point of view, to just firstly deal with one at a time. And I think I'm not sure if it's Deboko earlier who said learn to master one of the laws, but if you look at the first pillar, there's about 7 before we talk about habit. And when I was at 7, I was like, okay, but where do I start? Which one is more important? That type of thing. So law 8 actually said, okay, you just have to look at one and see how you fight it. So yeah, that's what makes it my number 2. And then my number 3, which I'll end with, was ask, don't tell. And which is also another bad habit, of course. You tend to, because you understand the subject better than the next person, so you don't allow the person an opportunity to actually think. And I mean, in leadership, you learn that if you're gonna always tell people what to do, then when you are not in the picture, people will not do those type of things. Things will actually fall apart. But when you ask, you award everyone an opportunity to actually actively think about what they want to do and find reason within themselves to do what they need to do. And because of that, you are able to build sustainability. So from a sales point of view, from a leadership point of view, I think this is quite applicable. And yeah, I think that is it from my side. I also found law 3 and 5 to actually work hand in hand, to say you must never disagree, because you must never disagree, it gives you an assumption that you are right, so find a way to tell the next person that you are right. But when you actually read law 5 that say you must lean in, it now draws you a little bit backward to think, could I actually be right, or is a thinking process that doesn't occur with me? So those two hand in hand, it just teaches you to also respect and acknowledge the next person, not just to apply law 3 and say, okay, don't disagree, but let me say this so that I don't disagree, but I tend that person to agree with me. But it also says, think a little bit, question yourself a bit. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I like how you link these laws together, and look at the sequence. It's quite refreshing. Thanks for that. Mr. Moloi is still here. Oh, he's here. So I put you towards the end because you are here for the first time. I wanted to get a feel of how the flow goes. So over to you, Mr. Modise.
Thank you so much, Mama Bolo, and thank you to everyone. My first time being on the book review together with you. Amazing and interesting thoughts that have come through, and I had my pencil and a journal, picking quite a lot and reflections as the colleagues were sharing. For me, 2 things that Mama Bula, I think it starts with what Debahai shared, and which will go to law 2 for me, which then talks to the model for self-development, which outlines about 4 things that are key. One is about on anything you got to learn about it, and then 2, you got to teach it. And I think in terms of teaching it, for me at the moment is the issue of making sure that I don't only teach it, but I write about it. I think there's some really great secret around, even if you have the key things that you want to say, but writing about that, it therefore gives you a better content for you to be able to even teach others. And thirdly is about sharing it, and I'm exploring on how do I share this and where do I share this, and multiplying the platforms of sharing the same thing, different formats and packages in which I can share this. And the last one is around the issue of he talks about review, but for me, I will bring it as feedback. How to be receptive to get feedback for the purposes of real improvement, because the model is basically about self-development. And I think one of the statements that stood out for me there is about the person who learns the most in any classroom is a teacher. I think it aligns with what you were saying earlier when you opened, that as you teach others, you then learn more. You're making an example about the workshops and how you engage in terms of sharing knowledge, but you then learn more. So that's a key thing for me on True. I'll go to one because that's actually what made me buy the book. So I was at Mainlane Exclusive Books. So when you go at the exclusive, you just go through the books and you check. And there are 5 buckets where he has just put them in on page 9. That's what actually made me like. What really made me to go for it first was that the simplicity in saying things that are profound, trying to complicate certain things. That's kind of like what really attracted me to the book. And to be honest, I'm stuck on 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the buckets, because I do think for me, from a reflection point of view, is the work that I need to do on me. And then if I have mastered, as Deborah has said earlier on, that mastering one thing, what law have you mastered? So if I could master these 3, it then becomes easier on the issues of resources and also building reputation. So those are kind of that's what really made me buy the book. I love the issue around knowledge, the skills. I love the thing around network. It challenges me a bit because I would want to spend to be in my space. But I think that's one of the areas that I'm really trying to work on, to make sure I'm in the right spaces with the right people, to make sure that at least it does contribute in terms of resources. And what I like, I think, it's on page 11, where he drew the buckets themselves, then showing more like a sequence, that one leads to the other and how they fill the other buckets. So you can't really want to go to reputation when you have not invested in your bucket 1, which is about your knowledge. And you cannot go to your skill if you have not invested in that. So that's what really stood out for me in terms of the 2 chapters, which still falls within with pillar 1. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Roche.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Law number 1 on the 48 laws of power is my favorite. And here also, the first law, is also what grabbed me in the 5 buckets. For me, you got to me.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Dr. Mloyi. Mr. Shai Robinson, go for it.
Hey, Mr. Roche, that was an ambush. I wasn't ready for that.
Yes. Are you fine? Are you fine? Should we?
No, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. Am I audible? Can all of you hear me?
Yes. Quickly.
Okay, I'll be quick. I'll be very, very brief. 2 minutes tops. So this was a very enjoyable book for me. Thanks for recommending it, Dr. Roche. Actually, when I read this book, it was almost like I was reading "The Obstacle Is the Way" for the second time, because they are even in the way that they are written, they are very similar. Someone mentioned stoicism earlier on. So the obstacle is the way. draws more on the Stoic principles, which may or may not resonate with, a lot of people. Whereas the Diary of a CEO is a much more contemporary and, personal, I believe, at least from my own opinion, narrative of his own journey as a CEO. I think it's much more modern. He reflects a lot on his own experiences, and he's very relatable. I know someone said that you do not like the way the book starts. I actually like it. It actually drew me a little
Why
bit
am I not
closer.
surprised?
I mean, you have to establish authority very early on. I mean, if you get on a plane and you hear the pilot saying, "Welcome on board, guys. I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm actually flying this for the first time," you'll be very uncomfortable. So what he does is he gives you at least, a platform that you can sit solidly on, knowing that he knows what he's talking about, and also he's only just 31. And I also like the first law. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order, and that's mostly because I worked a lot in professional services where people experience what we refer to as the Babel effect. They went to school, they never got the chance to apply their skills, they just jumped onto the highest paying role. So because they occupy that role, people tend to listen to what they're saying, even if what they're saying is really not that worth listening to. So, and that is because they haven't filled those 5 buckets in the right order. So that law, the first law, actually resonated with me. I'll stop there. I have got much more to say, but I'll stop there.
Okay, let's do a deal. Next time, you start first. You and the Timuloi will start first. And then I'll give Malisela the last chance. But anyway, thanks. It's not that, I think for me, it was overboard. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to establish credibility, but he was just overboard. I'm like, yeah, I got you. But anyway, it's a topic for another time.
Haters don't hate.
Do the rating, guys. I'm going to need 5 minutes and then we are out. Let's do 5 minutes and we're out. Rate and why quickly. Malisela, you said you want to jump off.
Yes.
How do you rate it and why? And quickly.
I give it an 8. It's a really good book. I think, as Tebogo said, there's a lot of laws, and as everybody probably said it, there's many other books that have these laws as well. I just think for me, what made it good was that it was relatable because maybe he's our millennial generation. But at the same time, the only thing though that I think is the how-to that he was lacking for me. But the rest of the book was brilliant. I think it like I said, with especially the psychological parts for me, because I've been for a few months of a year now, I've been really going into the psychology of anything, how people react to what, how people do what. And that for me was what stood out and what made it such a brilliant book.
Okay. Okay. Tebogo, 7.5. Quickly.
I'll give it a 7.5 because it's not new. And I think in Moonshot was with this big font, but really the book is not as big as it should be. You could have stopped at chapter 1. And I think for everyone else, it looks like they loved the first pillar and beyond that. Couldn't do much with it. So 7.5.
You should have stopped at chapter 1. Hey,
it could have, would be okay if you stopped it.
All right. Shama, I know you disagree.
A very fat 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Okay.
Shama, no.
No, truly. Very easy to read.
But that's her experience. And I think if you listen to how she reviewed the book, she has mined a lot quite from it. And I think the issue is that with books,
Shama is a Botswana person.
It's a Botswana effect.
It's a Botswana thing.
Yeah, Shama.
I think I agree with I'm just gonna go by what I see here, Smita. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10 as well. And my reasons are, well, for me, for a book to get a 10 out of 10, it needs to be well, just about the right length, right? Neither too short nor too long. right? The information needs to be applicable, it needs to be relatable, and it shouldn't be all over the place, right? Even though the laws are not somewhat, related in any way, but when you read one law and go on to the other, you can sort of use at least the confidence that you've gained in understanding the first law to delve deep and understand the second one. So yeah, I give it a 10 out of 10.
10, Shama, 10, Robinson, fine, 7.5, Tebogo, 8, Malisela, 20, quickly. 20?
I give it a 9 out of
9.
10. It's highly relatable. I'm also biased because, I listen to him every day. But high achievers, who want to become high achievers, should read this. And plus, he draws on his own personal experiences. So, yeah, it's a well done for me.
Thanks for saying that, Chweni. A lot of people that actually write books about success.
The platform now. We need to Glenn, a rating.
Okay, I'll give it an 8. I mean, I think the structure is quite good. And I like the fact that it doesn't talk a lot about how to do it. He gives you the principle and it's up to you to figure out how you'd like to do it.
Interesting. For one, it's a weakness. For you, it's a strength. Great. Mudise, out of 10.
Look, I'll give it a 6.
That hurts.
Yeah, I'll give it a 6. Yeah, look, because I think you're correct to say like the book is intimidating for no reason in terms of font. That you got to make sure that the book is not intimidating to potential readers. Then the font was not really necessary to be that big, and in some of the quotations is just one page. The whole page is just that quotation that could fit in just a sentence. Although you want to get a point across. That is one for me.
Okay.
And then 2, probably let me not go into much detail. But yeah, that's for me.
Okay. 6. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
that hurts.
Angie?
I'll give it a 10. Obviously,
10.
Botswana for the win, of course. But also the fact that it's well researched.
Now must go to Botswana to finish.
Botswana for the win.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'll give it a 7 also. There's a concept called chauffeur knowledge. Chauffeur knowledge is...
We're not far, Roche. 6 and you see? So don't be surprised when I give it 6.
Yeah, you might as well say 6, dog.
It might as well say 6, yeah.
Okay, let me tell you why. It's a good book. There's some good insights, but it's not his knowledge. It's people that he interviewed. It's not his original thinking. It's not his original knowledge. He just packaged other people's knowledge and put it in a book, and it looked like it's his knowledge. It's not his knowledge. So I'll give it a 7. I'll be nice. I'll give it a 7. But it's not his. Of course, nothing's new under the sun. But I felt there's no way he thinks like this. 38 laws. As a person, you can't think like this. You got this somewhere. And unfortunately, he's not giving us the sources of where he got it from. So for me, it's a 7. Thank you guys so much.
It's because you're not a millennial, that's why.
Yeah, that's why, Doc.
Like, I think that's why we can actually feel like, when you read when you interview, you should watch his interview. People go in depth, like 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. He observed people for a long, long time, and he gives examples and he goes back into history about, this person used this law, this person used this law. He goes into modern day, even in his interview. And he's a very gentle personality. This one, like the ego. It's bigger than
guys.
So
guys,
can I just
like that.
Roche, let me say
Roche, you can go. We'll stay and
Roche.
argue it.
No, but for me, I think what I missed on the book, and as the boy says, I think I missed depth in terms of I love simplicity. But at times I want some level of depth, and that's kind of like what I've missed in the book.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off. This is starting to hurt. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys.
Bye.
Chapter 1. He should have finished with chapter 1 and just let
Done.
it rest.
Yeah, done. And then
Last
we'll
thing,
have done the
I
bucket.
can't-
We'll be
Good-
talking
good
which
night.
bucket.
last thing, I can't believe people said this book was basically like Shoe Dog. In my head, that's what
Oh,
I'm
wait.
hearing.
Like, that was
that's what I'm hearing.
Shoe dog. No way.
Dave.
There's no way. it can be
But
that.
that's what I'm saying.
There's
When
no-
they say a 10, that's Shoe Dog.
Yes.
And I'm like, how is this Shoe Dog?
Yes.
It didn't inspire me to change the
No, there's
world.
no way. No, they're just being cousins.
Give us
Cousins.
one.
It's a Botswana thing.
I gave him 1.5
Good
because
night,
he's
guys.
a Botswana.
All right,
Good
I'm
night.
gonna jump
Thank
off as well.
you.
Good night.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Bye bye.
Yeah.